Hi, fellow climate change deniers. I've just crawled out from under the house to get a puppy, and it seems like Arizona is hot in the spring and hotter in the summer. But anyway, climate change man. Do 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 do. Da, da, da. Dun dun dun. Now, da-da-da-da, let's see. Where is those really darling areas that this thing has? In like page 63 or something like that. There's one whole chapter called Climatic Change Since the Last Glaciation, during the climatic change through the ages. And this last little paragraph here, after it goes through a bunch of scientific gobbledygook for 4 pages, says, while today's climates are glacial and rather normal from the geological standpoint, it must be recognized that the recent epoch of the geologist is a time of waning glaciation, rising seas, and return to normal climatic patterns. The general trend has been fairly uniform for several thousand years, but interruptions have occurred and short reversals in trend can be demonstrated already in the 40s. Let's see. Gobbledygook, gobbledygook, gobbledygook. There's a lot of good stuff in here, but I'd rather scan it than try to be, the weekly reader here. Climate and man. Oh, before we get to climate and man, we have to go to climate and changes in the atmosphere. Much has been written about varying amounts. This is page 94. Much has been written about the varying amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as possible cause of glacial periods. The theory received a fatal blow back in the 40s, when it was realized that carbon dioxide is very selective as to the wavelengths of radiant energy it will absorb, filtering out only such waves as very minute quantities of water vapor dispose of anyway. So no probable increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide could materially affect either the amount of insolation, not insulation like in your house, insolation like the soul, reaching the surface, or the amount of terrestrial radiation lost to space. And yes, I have a speech impediment. Deal with it. Large amounts of volcanic dust in the atmosphere have also been considered as a possible cause of glacial climates. Lower temperatures have followed great dust-producing volcanic explosions during the period of instrumental observation. Volcanoes have been particularly active during times of glacial climate. It seems most reasonable, however, to relate both volcanic activity and the influence as the underlying cause of the latter. So they're saying that climate change and the way that it affects the weather and the patterns of heat and the ocean and everything else is more likely geological, as in under the Earth's crust, than anything in the environment, which is definitely nothing we have to do with. I mean, maybe if you could say it was our fault if we've been fracking for the past 100 years, but we haven't, so that's can't be what's causing everything. Sorry. Variation in the Earth's heat. There is slow radiation into the atmosphere of heat that slowly escapes from the Earth's interior, under the ground. It has been suggested that variations in the rate of escape could produce changes in climates. The rate of escape, however, is too slow to have an appreciable effect upon such things as daily or seasonal temperature ranges today. These are controlled by solar rather than terrestrial energy. A possibility exists that cyclic variations in the rates of escape of the Earth's heat have occurred during the course of geological time. If such is the case, they have followed a general history of normal versus revolutionary conditions. The idea is highly speculative. At most, such changes have acted only as conditions modifying climatic patterns determined by the crustal behavior. Climate and man. Do you want me to read the whole thing? The world patterns of climates today depends primarily upon definite facts of atmospheric behavior related to surface conditions, such as the relative proportion of oceanic cover, shapes and sizes of the continents, their positions in reference to the poles and equator, and in general related to the distribution of plains, plateaus, and mountains on each land surface. The world pattern during any part of the geological past was in general related exactly to the same phenomena. Many of the facts of atmospheric behavior have remained practically constant throughout geological time, or geologic time if you prefer. The amount atmosphere has not changed appreciably, or its average temperature, viscosity, composition, or other significant physical property. The speed and direction of the Earth's rotation and the rate of escape of heat from the Earth's interior and the amount of solar radiation received by the Earth and similar fundamental climatic factors have either remained constant or varied by only inconsequential amounts. The most variable factors affecting climate have been those relating to continental sizes and elevations. It is thus reasonable to regard these as the most probable causes of such climatic change as indicated by geological evidence. Geological that time. This conclusion finds that strong support for reasons that today are unknown. The Earth has experienced several relatively brief periods of crustal unrest, each of which has been accompanied by evidences of glaciation in various parts of the Earth's surface and intensity and aridity in other parts. Between these revolutionary periods have been vastly longer intervals of quiet and climatic monotony. Such is the general outline of climatic history of geological proportion. Man appeared on the scene during revolutionary period and has experienced glacial climates. In the geologically recent portion of his experience, during which he has progressed through a cultural development which has accumulated in such scientific advances as the introduction of modern instrumental observation, he has witnessed a slow and possible permanent amelioration of extreme glacial climates. But he has at no time experienced a normal climate indicated by most of the geological record. We're not in the normal Earth weather yet. Man has observed that climatic conditions fluctuate rather widely from time to time at a given place, and in seeking to understand such natural phenomena, he has been tempted to explain such fluctuations on the basis of recurring cycles. As yet, however, no definite proof, and still none that's definite, no definite proof has been advanced to contradict the opinion that all such relatively short-term climatic changes are nothing more than matters of chance. The world pattern of climates today is the product of climatic variations, not the expression of a recurring mean or normal conditions. The extent of desert climate will not be the same next year as this. The humid margin of the desert is the product of an ever-changing distribution of extreme aridity. The time may come when such change will be well enough understood to be a definite forecast in economic value, but it is likely that such information will be the fruit of long-continued and patient research. Interest in changes of geological proportions will remain intellectual. There is satisfaction in learning the secrets of Earth history, even though our investigations are based almost entirely upon evidence that accumulated long before the appearance of man on the earthly scene. And all forecasts relate to a time that he may no longer be present to verify or contradict them. Cited literature. Ernst Antevs, 1928, The Last Glaciation, with special reference to the ice retreat of the northeastern North America. Theodor Alt, 1919, Handbuch der Paläogeographie, so obviously German for Handbook of Ancient Geography. Edward Wilbur Berry, 1923, Tree Ancestors Glimpse into the Past. Brooks, E.P. Brooks, 1926, Climate Through the Ages, A Study of Climatic Factors. And it goes on and on and on and on. 2 pages of citing from people from Cambridge, people from New York, people from the U.S. Geological Survey, the Climatology Institute in Lyons, France, I suppose. Several are in London, Oxford, Princeton, the American Natural History Museum, the LA Department Conservatory, the Geological Building, the Geological Society of America, New Haven, and London. So, this isn't just one guy's opinion kind of thing. This is something that is synopsing several, not just more than several, like a good, 28, 29 opinions here? Oh, more than that. There are 30 different people here. 30 different citations, and each one has a different person that it's citing for all of their information. So, it's not a big deal. Climate in the world patterns. Though modern man has freedom to vary this pattern because of control of other forces, he cannot go beyond certain limits set fundamentally by climate. 3 great patterns dominate the earth and are of tremendous importance to man: the pattern of climate, the pattern of vegetation, and the pattern of soil. When the 3 are laid upon each other, the boundaries coincide to a remarkable degree because climate is a fundamental dynamic shaping the other 2. The relationship between the 3 patterns have been an object of much scientific study, and the results are broadly outlined. A 4th pattern laid upon them is human culture, or civilization. The most obvious difference in one region to another is surface configuration, with such contrasts as between flat open plains and rugged mountains, or low marshland and high rocky plateaus. Vegetation also varies. Forests, for example, contrast sharply with open grassland or desert. Forest areas, in turn, can be distinguished by another kind, by the trees that compose the stands. Coniferous forests of the Pacific coast are quite different in appearance and aspect than deciduous forests in Ohio or Indiana. All these factors, yet, vary place to place. There are extensive areas where each is relatively homogeneous, and there it becomes possible to identify and map regions with uniform characteristics of surface, vegetation, and soil. The influence of climate on the growth of plants is a predominant factor affecting their distribution, and the relationship between soil formation on the one hand and vegetation and climate on the other is so close that the pattern displayed on a soils map reflects the climate around it. They don't call it El Niño, but they still have it here. It mentions, the mini typhoons, the hurricanes, and various things of that nature. The development of modern science, weather science. Although man's observations of weather began with the dawn of consciousness, meteorology, or weather science, is still a comparatively young member of the family of modern sciences. There you go. And that means it's going to be making mistakes, because all young things make mistakes. Accurate observations and truly representative open-air conditions, that is, unmodified by purely local or accidental influence, are not easy to obtain. Prior to the intervention of meteorological instruments, it was impossible to measure accurately atmospheric pressure, temperature, humidity, wind velocity. The barometer and the thermometer were developed during the 17th century. Thereafter, weather records became more accurate, but daily weather service, as it is known now, could not be established until the telegraph was invented, and a widespread system of daily synaptic reporting was organized. The polar front theory and air mass analysis, cold fronts, warm fronts, El Niños, all that stuff, right in there. During the World War, interruption of ocean weather reports led Norwegian scientists to extensive studies of air currents in the effort to develop methods of weather forecasting. The studies focused attention on the fact that, already mentioned, that most weather changes are related to boundaries between air currents having different conditions of temperature and humidity. The more or less continuous conflict between warm, moist currents, usually from the south or west, and cold, dry currents from the north or east in the northern hemisphere, so resembled the tide of battle along the Western European battlefront that the Norwegian school applied the name front, warm front, cold front, to the boundary between the different air currents and air masses as they're called. This concept led to a great step in meteorology, the evolution of the polar front theory and the air mass method of weather analysis, which systemized and simplified the picture of atmospheric formations, most frequently the cause of weather changes. Air mass analysis of the surface weather map gives a logical explanation of observed weather through a kind of extension or extrapolation of surface observations known as indirect areology. It guesses that the upper air structure to account for the weather experienced on the ground. And the reason I have this silly book's